YouTubers often use their platform to promote the projects they work on outside of their channel, like Justin Wang's metal band Jinx, James Charles' line of beauty products,
Hi, sisters!
or Keemstar's multiple failed attempts to make a video game.
That's how you win! It's just Pikmin! He made Pikmin!
And likewise, the desire to outgrow YouTube and transition to a more mainstream career in something else is part of what brings a lot of people to YouTube. Some are successful.
Did you imagine that you'd be winning film festivals and have 99% or whatever you have on Rotten Tomatoes with this thing?
And others struggle to transition to a wider audience.
They've got the well-known face, they've got the numbers, but they don't have what it takes to keep them in the room.
Which makes it interesting that one YouTuber has found himself on both ends of the YouTube promotion spectrum.
For a lot of internet content creators in today's digital world, YouTube provides a very effective outlet for growing your online brand.
Rusty Cage, the knife song guy.
From starting a YouTube channel to promote his music, to later using that same channel to promote his new comic book, Requiem of the Crazies. Rusty Cage's utilization of platform and persona is unique to say the least.
I don't know, dude, how have you been? I'm noticing the whole Britney 2007 thing going on with you.
Which is why today, we'll be exploring the works of Rusty Cage, how they reflect on his comic, Requiem of the Crazies, and the path that led him to that point. Cue intro. When Rusty was about 16, he stole a slushie machine with some friends and ended up getting arrested. He was later put on house arrest, where Rusty found himself with nothing but free time, which led to him learning how to play the guitar and write songs.
And while awaiting all the trials, I was put on house arrest for about 6 to 7 months. During this period, I was confined to my room and left with a lot of time in which I filled by learning how to play guitar.
And with that newfound interest in music, Rusty would need a stage name.
I wanted to upload my songs to MySpace without anyone knowing it was me, so I had to think of a cool name. Stealing that slushie machine was the best thing that I ever did. It made me who I am today.
With Rusty's music, you either get something completely grim and silly, like a parody of a kid's song.
Jump off the trampoline and land on your neck. Now your neck is broken and your head looks dumb.
Or you get some kind of a dark narrative that tells the tale of a lost soul suffering.
Lives are flies and then we die as quickly as we're born. Nothing that we make is taken, happiness or scorn. If every hope abandons you, there's peace in that you know. But when you hit rock bottom, only one way left to go.
But one of the more interesting things I found about Rusty's music is that it kind of blends genres and focuses more on the lyrical narrative rather than sticking to one style or genre exclusively.
I get inspired musically by thousands of different artists. I get inspired by black gospel church choirs or Nine Inch Nails, or even sometimes shitty pop songs. But I get most of my inspiration from my favorite artists, like Tom Waits and Randy Newman. Their songwriting ability really puts them in a category of their own, and a category that I someday want to be in. Both of them have big, ugly singing voices, and yet can sing a love ballad straight from the heart in the rarest, purest way. That, to me, is truly inspiring.
More so than the technical aspects, I think the lyrics and stories in Rusty's songs are what interest me the most. They all have this dark, cultish lore to them, building this nightmare world where fear and delusion become real, which is fitting given what inspired Rusty to make them in the first place.
I get inspiration to write songs whenever I think about the macabre or grotesqueries that exist under the dark blanket in our minds. I get inspired by depression and doubt, death, and the occult. Religion is a huge part of my music. Religion, or the lack thereof. All the dirty things that people avoid thinking about during the day, but are haunted about in the twilight hours before sleep, inspire me. But also I write a lot of songs about really stupid shit too, so I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about.
But speaking of Rusty's more comedy-centric songs, none of them are as infamous as The Knife Game.
There is an old tradition, a game we all can play. You start by getting liquored up and sharpening your blade. You take a shot of whiskey, you grab your knife and pray, and spread apart your fingers, and this is what you say.
Well, I'm not the originator of Five Finger Filet, but I am the creator of the song that goes along with it.
The Knife Game would bring Rusty an enormous amount of growth on the platform, skyrocketing his channel to nearly 50,000 subscribers in just a month. However, that newfound success was a double-edged sword. Despite the influx of new subscribers, his newfound audience wasn't exactly the demographic that Rusty had been aiming for.
Now, a large number of my viewers started following me after one of my videos called The Knife Game song went viral. That's fair and well, except for the fact that out of my 130 plus videos, only 9 or 10 are related to that subject matter. So often, I'll get comments like this one. Unsubbed. No point in your channel if you're done with the knife game.
Unfortunately, a lot of these subscribers were younger children. Kids who only wanted more knife game songs and weren't interested in Rusty's music that carried a darker tone.
I was never expecting that it would become as popular as it did, bringing in viewers who saw me more as a stuntman or a daredevil rather than a musician and an artist. But I don't like kids. I find them to be annoying brats for the most part. So to find myself with a huge audience of young kids who only know me from one video I made years ago performing a stupid parlor trick with a knife is unsettling.
It may have been the desire to purge his empty subscribers that led Rusty to the next stage of his YouTube career. As YouTuber Imp Lemon puts it,
There's a misconception on this website that a big subscriber count automatically equates to popularity. What you really have to consider when judging a YouTube channel's popularity is to look at the empty subscribers. How many people are subscribed to this channel who aren't watching their videos?
Because it would be a blessing to filter down my subscribers to those who enjoy all the other content that I put out.
Look, you aren't having fun making these videos anymore, but you're gaining a shitload of subscribers.
And sure, I may not always post top-notch videos, but I post videos that I enjoy making.
Ultimately, my decision came down to the quality of the subscribers themselves. Did I really want to continue entertaining a bunch of prepubescent children who don't actually respect me as a person? Did I really want to have a fan base composed mostly of people who I would never actually talk to in real life?
But either way, I'm going to make the videos how I want to make them and see what happens. So for everyone new to this channel, my name is Rusty Cage and I'm a fucking asshole. And don't forget to buy a t-shirt.
Unsubbed.
while Rusty never stopped making music, he started delving into new types of content, including his How to Lose Subscribers series.
I teach you some of the different techniques that I've discovered over the years to help convince any existing current followers that you may already have to unsubscribe from your channel.
As time went on, Rusty would take his already dark and brooding persona and dial it up to a 10 for future uploads, growing his persona from a mysterious gothic stranger into a sinister, villainous, confrontational someone who wasn't afraid to piss off his audience. The persona Rusty adopted was very similar to how people like Jonan Vasquez portray themselves publicly. And like Jonan Vasquez, Rusty's audience had a big influence on Rusty's sudden personality shift.
However, using my method of turning your back on your fans and instead acting out as an unpredictable asshole, YouTube content creators gain the ability to choose how and when they want to discard their subscriber base, ultimately eliminating any chance of growing a successful online identity.
But the newfound art of not giving a fuck is what I believe led Rusty to newer forms of content that leaned into more controversial topics, allowing him to speak more freely and openly on a variety of subjects, from his annoying fans, to music production, to more edgy topics, like words you can't say or the habits of Caucasian women.
White girls fuck dogs, white girls fuck dogs, white girls fuck dogs.
So that about catches you up to where Rusty Cage is now. I could go on about his current endeavors, like his collabs with YouTubers like Nerd City, Monkey Jones, or Imp Lemon, and while all that's definitely interesting, I don't think it played a role in his comic book the way his music and everything else I've talked about has. So we're just gonna leave our little history lesson here where it is, and now we're gonna move on to talking about the comic itself, which was supposed to be the focus of the video, and then I write opinioned an extra video out of what should have been a paragraph. But anyway, moving on. Given how Rusty infuses narrative into his music, it's only natural that he carries those same beats into his comic. Requiem of the Crazies finds its protagonist Dante at the lowest point of his life. His hopes and dreams of being a musician have evaporated. He's been fired from his dead-end job, and now he finds himself homeless after he catches his girlfriend cheating on him. With no place left to go, Dante wanders the streets aimlessly until he finds a seemingly empty back alleyway. And when Dante is at his absolute lowest, just as he's about to take his own life, a strange shaman appears from the shadows. Except he's not exactly a shaman, he's really just a homeless dude. And he doesn't exactly want to save Dante, he really just wants to avoid having blood spatter all over the alley where he lives, because it's kind of like his home. And it's that sense of dark comedy that really drives this book and its narrative forward. After a few drinks, the homeless man takes Dante to an abandoned building where they can find refuge for the night. And it's from Vernon that Dante learns about the plight of the homeless, how to get by, and how to avoid trouble. But before long, Dante starts to uncover the seeds of a hidden conspiracy within his town that only the homeless are privy to. To be completely honest with you, the writing of the first issue was kind of long-winded and it feels like it needed another draft to condense it all, but by chapter 2 that's less of an issue. and by the second book, I was hooked altogether. The second book opens with this Kirby-style action non sequitur, and it ends with this cliffhanger that really left me eager for more. Like, I really can't wait to see where this series goes next. So it starts kind of slow, but I swear to God, it picks up as it goes on, and it's really worth that slow build up in the beginning. Personally, I thought it was a solid read, but I can see why some people might take issue with it. So here's the thing. This is a very edgy book by a very edgy content creator. So don't go in expecting the most PC depictions of homeless people, and it's not to say the depictions of homeless people in this book are disrespectful or anything. Honestly, the book kind of conveys some pretty progressive ideas about the plight of homeless people, but the way the book eases you into that is really interesting, because their depictions start off as kind of like stereotypically offensive at first, but as time goes on and Dante becomes more assimilated into their culture, we start to see the more human side of these folks, including their day-to-day struggles and some backstory as to why these people are the way they are. One of the things that kind of surprised me about the book was how human these characters felt. It's not like that at first, but like I said, Rusty really eases you into it, and I think he tries to drive home the idea that just because these guys live different lifestyles, it doesn't make them any less human than we are. Issue 2 even brings up some points about how politicians take advantage of the issues that homeless people face. They claim to be helping them out, but in all reality, they're working around them and walking over them. Rather than fixing the infrastructural issues that keep the downtrodden from improving their quality of life, they apply band-aid solutions like hostile architecture or implement curfews. They keep this out-of-sight, out-of-mind mentality. If people can't see the problem, then it's not real, right? Politicians are cowards. They'd rather take the easy way out than attack these issues at their root or implement any sort of systemic change that would help these folks live better lives. They'd rather send their homeless elsewhere and make them someone else's problem.
City leaders are now offering the homeless one-way bus tickets out of town.
Business is moving because of repeated complaints from customers about the homeless.
They have been a nuisance at night, sleeping on the sidewalk in front of our door.
Sarasota City Council approved spending $1,000 to provide free bus trips out of town for homeless residents.
But critics of the program say the busing plan doesn't solve the homeless problem. In fact, it just shifts people to a different community.
These programs have mixed results.
Sounds like putting a Band-Aid on a bigger, deeper issue.
In Portland, the Times reports about half of those bussed out of town returned to homelessness. In 2017, we tracked 275 people who got one-way bus tickets. 49% reported they were in stable housing. The rest were still homeless or unaccounted for.
Just displaces them, makes you feel more comfortable.
But the city of Sarasota says it's not a displacement program at all.
We just don't want to send people away. We want to prepare people to go to their community and thrive and become a good citizen. A good citizen.
Anyway, getting back to the book. So without spoiling too much, you have a bunch of homeless people who have this sort of community, and there's also this man named Kellen who runs a cult of the homeless people. And then you also have a politician who's working with Kellen to manipulate the homeless and helping him get reelected. And all of this has something to do with the food rations given to the homeless by the government, with there being some indicators that the mystery meat may be more familiar than they'd like, in a more than friendly way. Honestly, the writing and the art in Chapter 1 are a bit all over the place, but the book really takes it up a notch by the second chapter, and by the second book it really comes into its own. The book exists in these droll gray and green tones that reflect the lives of the folk that are featured in the book. But then the book subverts that whenever you see the homeless folk that are being brainwashed. Everything looks all trippy and psychedelic, kind of like Joker's Carnival from The Killing Joke. So like I said, I really enjoyed the comic, but that's not to say I didn't still take issue with the way some of the subject matter was presented. Some of the gangster characters talk like they came out of a 2010 Michael Bay movie.
What you gonna do with this shrimp taco?
Just bump a cap in his ass, throw him in the truck, and then nobody gonna know nothing, not me.
Yeah, not in my trunk.
Your bumper car? Check it out. Listen to you little punk ass. I mean, what you ever done for us except ding my rim?
Kill Megatron. How about that?
Well, he didn't get the job done, you know what I mean? Because he's back now, you know what I
You
mean?
scared?
It's scared. Scared of your...
Honestly, I doubt this is something that the author would really care about, and I don't think it's the biggest issue in the world or that it ruins the integrity of the book. But if it's something you would care about or something that might offend you, then be aware of that before you pick up the book. You know, I guess consider this a trigger warning or whatever. And just to clarify, I'm not trying to cancel Rusty Cage. A lot of people play into these tropes without ever realizing they're problematic. I'm just saying that the book isn't for everyone. But in spite of all that, I still love it and I still want to see more of it. But even that feels like a bit of a nitpick compared to my other issue with the book. With that being that Jarlath Jake's origin is a bit, I don't know, heavy for a character we're supposed to find redeemable, or I guess is supposed to be redeemable, I don't know. I can't really tell if Jarlath Jake is supposed to be a good guy or a bad guy at this point, but I also kind of think that's supposed to be the point of the character. Like, if you're a homeless person, you're gonna be dealing with some motherfucking shady people, including people who have done awful things in their past. You just can't help being around those people when you're living a lifestyle like that. But I don't know, maybe the thin blue line quote in the origin issue kind of redeems him a little bit in my eyes. So maybe I'm misunderstanding this character, and I kind of get like Kylo Ren vibes from him, so maybe that's where Rusty is taking his arc, if that makes sense. Like, maybe the only way for him to redeem himself is to have a tragic death. That's how I would guess that the book would go anyway. So like I said before, I found myself enjoying the book a lot more the second time I read it. And I love how part 2 opens with a dual framing device, where Super Tokyo Man and the gangster's stories are told side by side until they collide. And then how that's followed up with a transition that feels like it's taken straight out of The Dark Knight Returns, as Super Tokyo Man passes by all these TV broadcasts that give us more context about the world of the story, only to cut to a new character that's watching the same program elsewhere. It's just a brilliant transition, and it's a great opening for the book. It's small things like that as a comic book fan, I really appreciate, because that sort of visual language is essential to making a comic book feel like a comic. And a lot of first-time comic creators don't understand how to use that language to tell a story yet. Honestly, the first issue kind of lacks that, but like I've said before, the second issue really kicks it up a notch, so I can only imagine that the next issue is going to kick it up a notch even more. I can't wait to see where Rusty takes this from here. Like, you can really tell that he's learning, and if this is where he is now, I can't wait to see where he goes like 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years from now. If you want to compare this comic to others, you could probably compare it to stuff like Jonan Vasquez's body of work from Slave Labor Comics. Stuff like Johnny the Homicidal Maniac and Squee. But to be fair, that's really only an aesthetic. Like, I loved those books when I was younger, but whenever I try to go back to them, I can't help but shake the feeling I've kind of grown out of their sense of humor. Which is why I'm thankful that Requiem of the Crazies has a much more subtle and subdued sense of humor. The books are really different tonally, and Requiem has a lot more substance, but in terms of like edgy, dark indie comics, I imagine people would group them together regardless. And like I said, they're a little bit similar aesthetically. But whereas Squee is like manic and random, Requiem is more subtle and less in your face. Requiem's jokes are steeped in subtle irony that make you dwell about the reality of their situations. They make the reader think about the corrupt world these characters live in, and through proxy, the corrupt world that we live in. So now this is just speculation, but I think that Rusty took a lot of inspiration from some classic Batman moments, and I think that's pretty cool. Like I said before, I think the trippy colors in Kellen's trips and the TV montage are homages to The Killing Joke and Dark Knight Returns. And the opening of Book 2 with Super Tokyo Man feels like it was taken straight out of Jack Kirby comic. They always opened with these big splash pages and big battles, and then they cut to something that was either kind of related or not related at all. Most modern Marvel movies do this too, so it's really cool to see this classic comic trope used in an indie comic like this. And there's this one sequence where Dante is chasing a truck that I thought was really dynamic, and it reminds me of an issue of the original Eastman Laird Ninja Turtles run where there's a car chase that lasts an entire issue. And honestly, the art in the book in general kind of reminds me of the original run of Ninja Turtles. So by the time I had finished issue 2, I was eagerly anticipating issue 3, which I had already backed on Indiegogo and should be arriving at some point, I guess. Maybe it'll already be here by the time I upload this, who knows. But I was surprised by how well the first 2 books were put together. It's got really good binding, and the print quality is good too. And there are ads for YouTubers inside of it, which is pretty neat seeing as I watch most of the creators featured here. And I like how the book has a spine even though it's a floppy. I think that's pretty neat. Now, would I recommend the book? Yes, but with a stipulation. If you're into big 2 superhero books and you don't read anything else, then this isn't a book for you. But if you read stuff like Squee or American Vampire, the original run of Ninja Turtles, Flintstone, Sandman, Immortal Hulk, Venom, or you're a fan of indie comics in general, then this is a book for you. But if you want to read it before you make your final decision, I'm pretty sure that Rusty has scans of it for free on his website, and you can buy the book on that same site too if you do like it. So if you want to check it out and support an independent comic creator, go to rustykage.tv and check out Requiem of the Crazies. And if you like this video, maybe you'll like my video on cringy TikTok cosplayers, or maybe my video on Twin Peaks. And if that's not up yet, then be sure to subscribe so you don't miss it whenever it does come up. And lastly, I'd like to thank my lovely supporters on Patreon. So with all that being said, I'll let Rusty play us out. This has been Swim Team Captain 7 from Super Swim Team 7, signing off.
It's kinda hard being a bum in this town, where the kids run wild, running all around. We go by behind without a sound, and we all got stories to tell.